Hello everyone, peace be upon you. Before we begin, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe, and stay with me until the end of the story. Also, leave a comment telling me which city and country you're watching from. I'd love to see how far my story has reached. For those of you who have already subscribed, I sincerely wish you good health, ease in all your affairs, abundant blessings, and may all your hopes and dreams come true. Amen. Now, let's begin the story. Addison Hayes grew up in the heart of Kansas, where the wheat field stretched out like an ocean of gold under a sky that seemed to go on forever. Her family's farm sat at the edge of a long dirt road, quiet, isolated, and steady. Out back, behind the barn, was a small airstrip, just a narrow path of packed-down dirt. And next to it, an old crop duster plane that belonged to her father. Faded yellow paint, rust at the seams, and grease stains on the wings. But to Addie, it was magic. She was flying by the time she was 12. Not legally, of course. But under her dad's close eye, she learned to taxi, to throttle up, to lift off. She memorized the feel of the wind against the wings, the way the engine hummed when everything was working just right. She could read the sky better than any book in school. The plane wasn't just a machine to her, it was freedom, control, something that made the rest of the world quiet down. While other kids worried about prom or football tryouts, Addie was sketching flight paths in her notebook and calculating wind drift on the back of her math homework. She wasn't exactly the talk of the town. Most people thought she was odd, maybe a little too serious. But she didn't care. She had the sky. Every morning before sunrise, she'd climb into that old plane with a thermos of coffee and the quiet buzz of crickets fading into the early light. Her father would watch from the porch, arms crossed, nodding once if she nailed the takeoff, shaking his head if she came in too steep. They didn't say much. They didn't need to. The nickname, Crop Queen, started as a joke from a local mechanic. But it stuck. By 16, she could pull off tight banks over the fields and skim the tops of trees with a level head and steady hands. Word got around. A retired airman passing through town once watched her land in a crosswind that would rattle most trained pilots. He didn't say much either, just walked up after and asked, "You ever think about the Air Force?" She hadn't. Not seriously. But that night, the idea took root. By 18, she applied. Not to prove anything to anyone. Just to see if her skills meant something beyond Kansas. The day her acceptance letter arrived, she sat in the kitchen staring at the envelope like it might explode. Her dad sliced it open with his pocket knife, scanned the page, then passed it to her without a word. She was in. Lone Brook Air Base wasn't what she expected. Sand everywhere. Mountains in the distance. And heat that clung to your neck like a wet rag. But the moment she stepped off the bus and looked at the jets lined up on the tarmac, something clicked. This was the next step. The real test. Most of the other recruits came from military families. They had crew cuts, clean boots, and confidence dripping off them like sweat. Addie didn't talk much. She just listened, watched, waited. Let them laugh about the girl from the wheat fields. Let them doubt. Because inside, she already knew what they didn't. The sky didn't care where you came from. Only how you flew. Addie reminded herself of that every morning as reveille blasted through the barracks and boots hit the floor in sync. Lone Brook didn't waste time breaking you down. The heat, the drills, the constant orders, it all came fast and loud. Most recruits had a chip on their shoulder, something to prove. Addie just kept her head down and did the work. Her flight instructors noticed early. She didn't just respond to commands, she anticipated them. In the simulator, her reflexes were clean, smooth, efficient. She didn't panic when things went sideways. She made adjustments, recalibrated, adapted. It unsettled the others. Ryan Kepler, one of the louder guys in her flight class, took a particular interest in her. "Hey Kansas," he'd say, "you ever flown anything faster than that crop beater back home?" She didn't bite. Just offered a tight smile and walked past. Let him run his mouth. It didn't matter. But the tension was building. It wasn't just him. A lot of the cadets had doubts. She wasn't flashy. Didn't brag. Didn't talk herself up. And in a place like this, sometimes silence made you a target. The breaking point came during a group formation drill. They paired her with Kepler. Mid-flight, turbulence kicked in hard. Kepler overcorrected, drifted too close. They were seconds from clipping wings. Addie didn't flinch. She adjusted, shifted formation, and brought both planes back in line before the instructor even had time to bark into the comms. After they landed, Kepler was furious. "You think you're better than everyone else?" he snapped. She just unbuckled her harness, looked him in the eye, and said, "No. I just don't panic." Word spread fast. The quiet girl from Kansas had ice in her veins. But the Air Force didn't care about whispers. It cared about performance. And red flag was coming. The biggest test yet. Major Hensley ran the prep brief. Gruff voice, sharp eyes, reputation like stone. "This isn't a game," he said, pointing at the projector. "This simulates live combat. You screw up, you don't respawn. You eject." Addie studied the maps every night. Terrain. Flight paths. Engagement zones. She memorized radar patterns and practiced evasive maneuvers in her sleep. This wasn't just flying anymore, it was survival. Then came the first red flag run. Dozens of aircraft in the sky. Simulated enemies everywhere. Alarms blaring. Comms buzzing. Kepler flew on her wing again. He was quieter this time. Focused. The enemy squadron closed in fast, using jamming tech that threw off half the team's instruments. One pilot panicked and broke formation. Addie didn't blink. She restructured the squad mid-flight, issued instructions on the comms, and flanked the lead bogey like she'd done it 100 times. She didn't just fly. She led. Back on the ground, Hensley pulled her aside. "No compliments. Just a nod. That's how you stay alive," he said. Then walked off. By the end of that week, the name started circulating. Falcon. Fast. Controlled. Deadly precise. Not everyone liked it. But no one argued it. Because up there, in the chaos and the noise, Addie was something else. Something no one had seen coming. The girl from the wheat fields had become a problem no one could ignore. But with recognition came pressure. Once the name Falcon started spreading, expectations tightened around Addie like a noose. Every flight, every maneuver, every debrief, people watched her now. Not just instructors, but classmates too. Some out of respect. Others just waiting for her to mess up. Red flag didn't let up. The next round of exercises came harder, faster, and more chaotic. Night simulations. Electronic warfare drills. Close quarters dogfights with limited visibility. Pilots were dropping confidence like loose bolts, making mistakes under pressure. But Addie kept holding steady. Her mind processed variables in layers, radar, topography, enemy position, fuel burn, all running like gears in a machine. Major Hensley started assigning her leadership roles. Unofficial at first. But soon, everyone knew when Falcon was in your flight group, you had a shot at finishing in one piece. Even Kepler had come around. He didn't say it outright, but the way he followed her lead in the air said enough. He stopped pushing back. He just listened. Still, not everyone was thrilled. A senior cadet named Granger started taking shots at her behind closed doors. Said she was too quiet. Said she wasn't team material. Said you couldn't trust someone who never cracked a smile. He was older, confident, polished. Came from a long line of pilots. His word carried weight. And for a moment, it started to work. Some of the other cadets got colder. The mess hall grew quieter when she walked in. People she used to train with stopped looking her in the eye. Addie noticed. But she didn't flinch. She didn't fight back with words. She doubled down on the work. While the others went to base events, she studied terrain maps. When they slept in on Sunday, she was running simulations with Eve in the maintenance hangar. They ran system tests together, fixed glitches in the mock HUDs, and walked through hypothetical failures. Over and over. Until failure wasn't a possibility anymore. One night, Addie found herself staring up at the sky from the edge of the airstrip. The stars were out, bright, clear, and cold. She thought about home. The fields. Her dad's old plane. The mornings that smelled like oil and dirt and sunrise. She wasn't that girl anymore. But she carried that silence with her. That focus. That grit. The next morning, everything shifted. They got hit with a double drill run. First exercise was standard recon. Second was surprise combat intercept. 2 back-to-back sorties with just enough time to refuel in between. Fatigue cracked through the class like a lightning bolt. Addie took lead on the second mission. Granger was in her unit. He didn't like it, but he didn't argue. Mid-flight, the jamming tech kicked in harder than ever. Comms went fuzzy. Visuals dropped. Targets scrambled. Granger lost radar lock and panicked, broke formation and almost clipped Kepler on the left. Addie reacted before the instructors could intervene. She pulled up, adjusted altitude, re-established formation, and redirected the assault vector, all within seconds. No screaming. No panic. Just orders, clean and sharp. When they landed, the tarmac was dead quiet. Hensley approached with arms crossed, eyes scanning every face. Then he looked straight at Addie and said, "You saved that mission." No one doubted her after that. Falcon wasn't just a call sign anymore. It was a warning. And soon, she would need every ounce of that reputation. 3 weeks into Red Flag, Lone Brook Air Base announced the most dangerous simulation of the entire program. The instructors called it Black Horizon, a full-scale mock combat scenario that mirrored real war conditions, enemy jamming, stealth targets, multiple squadrons in the air, fuel limitations, and live emergency procedures. No resets. No instructor hand-holding. If you failed hard. A few cadets cheered like it was some action movie. Addie didn't. She could feel the shift in the air. The instructors weren't smiling. The mechanics were checking equipment twice. Even the seasoned pilots from other bases looked tense. This wasn't just another drill. This was where careers cracked or solidified. Before takeoff, Hensley pulled the squad into briefing. His voice was low, clipped, more serious than usual. Black Horizon is not about flying fast. It's about staying alive, he said. You will lose instruments. You will lose visuals. You will be hunted. Your job is simple, complete the mission and bring your team home. Addie didn't look around the room. She didn't need to. She could feel the nerves crawling across everyone's skin. When the jets launched, the desert below looked calm, flat sand, red ridges, heat haze stretching across the earth. But the sky turned hostile fast. Radar chirped. Warning lights blinked. Enemy signatures flooded the screen. The exercise had begun. Addie took lead position with Kepler on her right and Granger behind. Within minutes, simulated missiles locked on their squadron. Pilots broke formation, diving for cover. One went too low and had to eject from the exercise. Another lost comms and drifted off the grid. Addie stayed calm. Maintain altitude. Don't run blind, she said into the mic. Her voice was steady. Controlled. The instructors listening from the command center went silent. Then the jamming hit, hard. Screens flickered. Target markers vanished. Navigation recalibrated into static. The sky became a maze with no map. Granger cursed into the mic. Kepler's breathing picked up. Someone behind them yelled about losing engine responsiveness. Addie didn't raise her voice. Switch to thermal. Adjust heading 10 degrees south. Follow my vector. She flew smooth, reading what the instruments couldn't tell her. Air pressure. Wind drift. Jet vibration. Years of crop duster instinct filled the gaps technology couldn't reach. Enemy fighters swooped from above. Addie banked hard, pulled the squad into a defensive arc, and countered with a simulated missile strike that hit the lead bogey dead center. The control tower erupted. Even instructors weren't expecting it. But the fight wasn't done. The scenario escalated, more enemy aircraft, more jamming, more chaos. 2 squadrons were ordered to retreat. Addie's was told to push forward. Fuel was dropping. The desert heat was frying the engines. Every move had to count. When the last ambush hit, everything went sideways. Simulated enemy drones locked onto Kepler. Granger lost altitude and started spiraling. For a split second, it looked like the entire mission would collapse. Addie made the call no one else dared make. She split the formation. Orders came fast and clean. Kepler, climb. Granger, cut throttle 2% and roll left. I'll intercept. Her jet dove straight into the threat zone, flying low, just feet above the desert floor, where radar interference was weakest. She broke the drone lock, swung up into a vertical climb, and took out the target with a simulated strike while the jet's alarms screamed in her headset. Back at command, Hensley stood up from his chair. No instructor spoke. No one even breathed. Addie reformed the squad and pushed through the final waypoint. Fuel hit critical. Systems were glitching. But they made it across the finish line, every aircraft still alive, something no squad had managed in years. When they landed, mechanics rushed the runway. Pilots climbed out shaking. Kepler walked over and just stared at Addie like he couldn't believe she was real. Granger didn't say a word, just nodded once, tight-lipped, eyes down. Respect earned the hard way. Hensley walked out onto the tarmac. No speech. No dramatic praise. Just a hand on her shoulder and one sentence. You just rewrote the standard. And that was the moment everything changed. Falcon was no longer proving she belonged. Now, the Air Force was trying to keep up with her. After Black Horizon, everything shifted. Falcon wasn't just a standout, she became the pilot others watched to figure out what to do next. Instructors started referencing her maneuvers during debriefs. Junior cadets took notes when she spoke, even when she barely said anything at all. Her name carried weight, not because she chased it, but because she earned it the hard way, flight by flight. But something else started creeping in. The pressure. Every mission came with an unspoken expectation. Falcon wouldn't just succeed, she'd outperform everyone else. There was no room for average anymore. Even Kepler, now one of her closest allies in the air, noticed it. You ever take a breath? He asked one afternoon, sitting on the edge of a hangar with grease on his face and his helmet beside him. Addie shrugged. Breathing's easy. Winning isn't. He smirked, but he knew she wasn't joking. The final phase of Red Flag loomed, and it wasn't just about flying anymore. This round focused on leadership. Falcon was tapped to command a full squadron through 3 continuous sorties across hostile simulated territory. Stealth missions, coordinated attacks, fuel restrictions, real-time variable shifts, all without backup. Major Hensley handed her the orders in the war room. You're not just a pilot anymore, he said. You're the point of the spear. She studied the mission file in silence. Then nodded. Prep was brutal. The mechanics, especially Eve, worked overtime to make sure everything was tight. Addie rewrote formation patterns, redrew attack routes, and drilled her squadron until they could communicate without a word. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She just refused to lose. When the mission began, the desert air felt heavier than usual. Every takeoff felt final. Addie led from the front, jet engines screaming as the squad sliced through the sky. The first 2 sorties went as planned. Clean engagements. Minimal casualties. Addie coordinated attacks with precision, guiding her wingmen like chess pieces. Each move was measured, deliberate. She anticipated enemy tactics and shifted formation seconds before traps closed. Then came the third. An unexpected weather system swept in, sandstorm turbulence, lightning, visibility down to almost nothing. Enemy signatures multiplied. The comms stuttered. The command center radioed, abort if necessary. Addie clicked the comm twice. Negative. They pressed forward. Midway through, a wingman lost power. Another took simulated fire. Kepler was hit with jamming interference and veered off pattern. Addie didn't flinch. She split the team again, assigned new roles midair, and adjusted the strategy on the fly. While others would have broken rank, she tightened it. She led a flank maneuver under cover of terrain, using blind zones in the radar net, something no one had ever attempted in this particular simulation. They reached the objective, completed the mission, and returned home with 0 losses. The silence in the debrief room afterward was almost sacred. The instructors didn't ask questions. They just stared at the data. Then one of them leaned back and muttered, "We didn't train her for this. She trained herself." That night, back in the barracks, Addie sat alone outside. She looked up at the stars, the same way she did back home in Kansas. It felt different now. Bigger. Sharper. Louder. Her name was on every mouth at Lonebrook. Her performance already circulated through other bases. But it came at a cost. She hadn't called home in weeks. Her hands trembled when she wasn't flying. She hadn't slept a full night in days. Her mind constantly spun with trajectories, airspeed, and fuel ratios. Victory came with weight, and she carried all of it. Kepler found her out there and sat down without saying anything. Just passed her a canteen and looked out at the horizon. After a long pause, he said, "You ever think about what's next?" She didn't answer. Because for the first time, she wasn't sure. Falcon had proven she could lead. She could fly. She could outthink, outmaneuver, and outperform anyone they put in the air. But now she had to figure out something harder, how to survive her own momentum. Because once the exercises ended, once the debrief stopped and the instructors moved on to the next class, Falcon didn't just return to normal. She couldn't. The expectations didn't disappear. They just evolved. She was selected for immediate deployment. Her orders came in a plain envelope, no fanfare. Just coordinates, dates, and her squadron assignment. Real missions. Real combat zones. No simulators. No safety nets. The transition was fast. She was flown out to a forward operating base in the Middle East, stationed at the edge of a high-risk region. The moment she stepped off the transport, the air felt different, thicker with tension, quieter in a way that wasn't peaceful. You didn't just fly here. You fought. The hangars buzzed with urgency. Mechanics moved fast. Pilots didn't talk much. No one cared where you came from. Only if you came back. Addie didn't flinch. She studied the maps, reviewed her squad, checked every bolt and wire on her jet with Eve's voice still in her head, "Check it twice, or you'll check out early." Her first mission came at dawn. A reconnaissance run that turned hot halfway through. Enemy aircraft appeared on radar, unmarked, fast, unpredictable. Her squad went into evasive, but Addie locked on and cut through the chaos. She guided her team out without damage, but the adrenaline stayed with her for hours. From that day on, she flew almost daily. Interception runs. Surveillance sweeps. Close air support. She adapted fast, because she had to. The margin for error didn't exist out here. Her call sign, Falcon, spread faster than she expected. Other squadrons knew her by reputation. Commanders requested her by name. New pilots asked to train under her. She gave them what she could, but the pressure kept building. Then came the mission that changed everything. High-value intel pointed to an active enemy stronghold outside a mountainous border region. The objective: eliminate the threat with minimal ground involvement. Her squadron was chosen to lead the airstrike. Mission brief was clear. No margin for improvisation. High altitude. Precision payload. Coordinated approach. One pass. One shot. But 30 minutes into flight, turbulence worsened. Visibility dropped. A sandstorm moved in early, scrambling radar. One wingman lost his navigation. Another suffered comm interference. Command issued a call to abort. Addie keyed her mic, negative. Adjust heading. Tighten formation. We're finishing this. She took point, leading them through a narrow corridor of mountain airspace, flying almost blind but trusting her instincts. Everything she learned over Kansas, over Lone Brook, over every red flag simulation, this was where it mattered. She saw the target through a break in the storm and gave the strike order. Clean hit. No civilian structures touched. No follow-up required. When they returned, base command was already on the runway. The operation had been monitored live. And for the first time, Falcon wasn't met with silence or nods. She was met with a salute. After that, something shifted in her. Not in the way she flew, she was still precise, still deadly, still quiet. But in how she carried herself. She stopped chasing perfection and started mentoring. When younger pilots asked for help, she took them aside. When techs struggled with diagnostics, she got under the wings with them. She became the one others leaned on. And finally, when her rotation ended, she returned home. Not to Kansas, not yet. But to the place it all changed, Lone Brook. The instructors were different. New cadets filled the mess hall. But when she walked in, everything slowed. Heads turned. Not because she was a legend. But because she looked like someone who had seen the sky at its worst, and came back stronger. She visited her old hangar. Ran her hand along the edge of a jet like it was an old friend. She didn't say much. She never did. But later that night, she finally called home. Her dad picked up. She didn't know what to say. He beat her to it. You made it fly further than I ever could, he said. She smiled, tears burning her eyes. Only because you showed me how to take off. And just like that, the weight lifted. Falcon wasn't just a call sign. It was a legacy. Born in the fields, sharpened in the fire, and carried through the clouds by a girl who refused to break. And the sky? It still belonged to her.